With the regular season having come and gone, the Philadelphia Eagles left their mark on the league and on the franchise. How good were the players this year? Who won All-Pro honors? What records were broken? And we are picking Wildcard Weekend presented by BetOnline.net. All that and more on this edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Gino Camilleri, the host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, and this episode is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Locked On NFL. And once again, thank you everybody for joining us here at the Locked On Eagles podcast. Whether this is your first, 10th, 100th, or 1000th episode, we thank you for tuning in wherever you get your shows. If you're listening the traditional way on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Odyssey, Amazon Music, or if you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you tuning in. You could follow us on Twitter at GC24_football, at DiBiase LOE. You can find my co-host, and you can find the mothership at Locked On Birds. And for your second listen, make sure you check out all the other spectacular podcasts over at the Locked On Podcast Network. But we have some things to talk about. We don't have a game this week. We have one more week to sit back and relax. It is Wild Card Weekend. Some big news came out today, though. We have to wrap up the regular season with some big things, some rightfully awarded awards, let's say. It was All-Pro Day. The All-Pro lists came out, and man, were the Philadelphia Eagles all over the All-Pro list. And this season was just spectacular. We're going to start by talking about this All-Pro list, get to the 6 individuals who made the list. In segment 2, we're going to talk about all of the franchise records that this team broke. And in segment 3, we're going to get into some fun, get into Wildcard Weekend, pick all of the lines at betonline.net. But first, we are talking about the All-Pro list. The Philadelphia Eagles had not 1, had not 2, not 3, not 4, not even 5, but 6 individuals get listed as All-Pros. The list goes as such. First team, offensive tackle, arguably the best player at his position, arguably the best tackle in the league. Lane Johnson gets yet again a first-team All-Pro bid. And you could not mention first-team All-Pro without the guy who wins this award every single year, just about every single year, let's say. Offensive center, the heartbeat of this offense, Jason Kelce. Getting to the second team, quarterback, Jalen Hurts. You couldn't mention All-Pro this season without talking about Jalen Hurts, as well as wide receiver A.J. Brown, as well as edge rusher Haason Reddick, as well as cornerback James Bradbury. Am I surprised by any of these names? Absolutely not. All of these 6 individuals were voted and rightfully so won this award, which I and many other people around the National Football League holding a much higher standard than basically any other award that is out there. You talk about the Pro Bowl, doesn't really mean much anymore. You talk about these individual awards, you talk about the Walter Payton Man of the Year, the Comeback Player of the Year, the Offensive Player of the Year. All those are good and great, but All-Pro is the one that it just surmises what you were. You were an All-Pro. You were the best of the best. And what does that take? It doesn't just take these 6 individuals. It takes all of these individuals playing within their system with the coaching staff that puts them in a position to succeed. And man, did they do that in the best way possible. We know Lane, we know Jason, we know those 2 were going to come in and have great seasons. They've been All-Pros time and time and time again within the NovaCare complex, within the walls of Philadelphia. It isn't new. But the 4 guys that won the second team All-Pro honors, all of them were question marks coming into this year to see how are they really going to do in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts. There were big question marks. We talked about it on this show. Could he really be that guy that gets you to the next level? Well, man, we're talking about him potentially being the MVP and in the consideration for that award. He gets second team All-Pro. He could have been first team All-Pro if he played all 17 games, in my opinion. He's going to come out and light up the playoffs. And a lot of it has to do with the guy they brought in to help him out, and that is A.J. Brown. Another huge question mark. We knew this guy was a multi-time 1,000-yard receiver, but that was in Tennessee. That was in a scheme where it was more play-action based, and you had Ryan Tannehill under center where you didn't have this athletic quarterback, but he was still a fantastic one-on-one threat. And what does he do? He comes to Philadelphia, and he even improves over that. He set a record, which we'll talk about in segment 2, that has never been done in the entire franchise by some big names, by some guys that are Hall of Famers. And A.J. Brown played as an All-Pro. Talk about the guys on the other side of the ball. Haason Reddick, third time in 3 years he's playing under a different defensive coordinator, and the guy has 15-plus sacks this year. He played at a level which I didn't think he could get to in his first year in this scheme, but once again, I'm eating crow. He comes in there and he's playing some Sam, he's covering in some curl hook areas, and he's getting to the quarterback, beating everybody with speed to power. He puts together combinations. He knows how to get to the football and cause all of these forced fumbles. And the guy who picks the ball off on the other side, no, it wasn't Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. No, it wasn't Darius Slay. It was James Bradbury, who was coming in having huge question marks of if he could even still play that position at a high level, where in New York, he was written off. He was playing a lot of zone defense, not as much sticky man coverage. He comes here and he beats Darius Slay, who was having just as good of a season as he was, to get the All-Pro award. 6 guys, hats off to all of them. All of these individuals should feel very proud, but I think all 53 guys, all of the coaches, all the practice squad players, everybody in the player personnel department should feel proud, because all of them were brought in a different manner, and 4 of them were brought in this year. Jalen Hurts is a completely rejuvenated person. 3 of them you signed off the street as free agent, and the first team guys have been around forever. So this team knows how to develop talent at important positions, and if they can't develop said talent at important positions, where to acquire high-level talent and elite-level talent, and how to do it in a multitude of different ways. And this was a fun offseason. It was a fun regular season, and these guys played their rear ends off and got awarded, rightfully so. 2023 is going to be just as hectic, hopefully with some big names coming through as well, but hats off to all 6 of those individuals. And some of these guys set some records on Sundays playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's what we are going to talk about when we get into who set and what records were exactly broken for the Philadelphia Eagles in franchise history. But before we do that, we have a message from our friends over at LinkedIn. They were the presenting sponsor of this episode, but they are always great. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you are surrounded by and you surround yourself with. That's exactly how those guys got those All-Pro honors, and that's what you do in corporate America as well. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you could find quick, attractive, qualified candidates for your job openings. You can get over 875 million member profiles to look at. You can identify the most qualified candidates and connect them fast and free with exactly what job they are looking for. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode of Locked On Eagles is also brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. You know that we love Built Bar here at the Locked On Eagles podcast and all throughout the Locked On Podcast Network. We just got through the holidays. I put on some pounds, eating some cookies, eating some stuff that might have not been as healthy. But to get back in the swing of things, I went to All Reliable. I went to something that will also help my craving for chocolate, for sweets, but it's delicious, healthy, and it'll make me feel great afterwards. It's only 130 calories per bar, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. And it comes in delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Go to built.com today to get a box of your favorite flavor, or you can run into your Sam's Club or Walmart and get any of the flavors that you desire in a local retail box store. Instead of waiting to get them shipped to you online from built.com, you could run into the store today and get them real quick. Get yourself a box. I'm waiting for mine to come in the mail. Built Bar is always one of the best sponsors. It is always one of the best tasting protein bars. Go get your Built Bar today. All right, everybody, welcome on back to this edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, making it your first listen each and every day. And for your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On NFL Today podcast. They will bring you the biggest storylines in 30 minutes or less, all throughout the NFL. But we only focus on the Locked On Eagles podcast here over at LOE. We're talking about the Birds, the boys from Philly, the boys from the 215, a team that in this franchise's history, not many of us have ever seen. We talked about all-pro winners in the first segment. Let's talk about some franchise-setting records, some things that have never been done, some quarterbacks like Donovan McNabb, Randall Cunningham, wide receivers Mike Quick, Harold Carmichael, Terrell Owens. Guys have had their records broken, shattered in this season. And let's bring you these big name and big time winners. Let's start out. I'm going to pull it up on the screen here for our friends that are listening on YouTube and watching along. But for our friends listening on your standard podcast, I will talk it out for you. Man, oh man, was this a fun season. I always say enjoy the ride. And what a ride this was in Philadelphia this season. All season long, we watched players like A.J. Brown, like Jalen Hurts, like DeVonta Smith, like Haason Reddick, like Fletcher Cox, so on and so forth, play at a level that I don't think any of us thought they could get to. And let's start with the big one, the win column. 14 wins. This team has never hit 14 wins. They have never had a 1 or a 4 after a 1 in the win column. The most they've ever had is 13. They did that multiple times in that run of the early 2000s when they were just getting to the NFC Championship year over year over year. They did that in 2017 where they went 13-3 as well. But this was the first time they ever got to 14 wins in the regular season. And man, if Jalen Hurts plays, that number could have been 15 or 16. We really do not know. And man, could that 477 points scored, which was a franchise record, been even higher once again if Jalen Hurts played. But that is an average. Do the math real quick. 17 games. You take that. It's close to 20. You divide that by 2. We're doing some quick math here. You're getting around 30 points a game. That's exactly where we thought this team should be. They needed to be a 30-plus point offense week in and week out to keep themselves alive and keep themselves in games. And they did exactly that. And how did they do that? They did that through the air. A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith both set records for the wide receiver position. A.J. Brown set a franchise record 1,496 yards in the air. 1,496 yards. And DeVonta Smith had 95 receptions. 95. As I mentioned before, think about some of the names that have been here in Philadelphia at the wide receiver position. Harold Carmichael, Mike Quick, Terrell Owens, Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, Alshon Jeffrey. Some of the great seasons. None of them have had this season. A season where you knew you had to throw, where the running game, it could only take you so far, as you saw in 2021. You go out and you acquire A.J. Brown this offseason. You got DeVonta Smith in the last offseason. You surrounded your quarterback by 2 guys that can separate in every area of the field. They can win in yards after the catch. They can win with their long speed. They can win with their elusiveness. And we're sitting here and saying, is this the best duo in franchise history? Was this the best duo in the NFL this year outside of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? You'd be hard-pressed to find another 2 that are even in that conversation. And talk about a duo. Let's talk about a quartet and even beyond that on the defensive side of the football, where they had 70 sacks. 70. 7-0 sacks. Last year was abysmal. There's no other way to say it. They could put pressure on the quarterback, but they couldn't finish. They couldn't hit home. They couldn't force fumbles. They couldn't set that team back and put them behind the sticks. Well, they did exactly that. 4 guys who had 10-plus sacks this year: Haason Reddick, Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. Fletcher Cox has just under 10. Milton Williams had his hand in the pot. Patrick Johnson. All of these guys played a role in getting this team to 70 sacks and getting this defense to hit all-time numbers. Was this season fun? It was a freaking blast. It was great on an individual level. It was great on a team level. And the best part about it is this team still has much left to show in the playoffs. All of those numbers are great in the regular season. But now when iron sharpens iron and you have to go in there and play top-level teams, how are you going to do it? Can you continue to play at that high-quality level? Well, we're going to see exactly that in just over a week. But before we do that, we have to watch a bunch of wildcard games. We have 6 of them this weekend. And when we return, we are going to be picking games presented by BetOnline.net. And this episode of Locked On Eagles, funny enough, is brought to you by our friends over at BetOnline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Eagles podcast and the entire Locked On podcast network. If you want to get in on the game, just grab your phone, go to BetOnline.net, put in some money. You'll get your winnings out quickly because you could bet on just about anything. You bet on NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB will be back sooner than you know it. Soccer's going on all the time. UFC, MMA, boxing, whatever you can imagine. BetOnline.net has it all. Get in on the game today by going to BetOnline.net, wherever you can get your internet. Easy and fast and safe withdrawals. Please bet responsibly. BetOnline.net, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, everybody, finishing up this regular season as the playoffs officially start tomorrow. The Philadelphia Eagles, they'll have to wait a little bit longer as they do have the bye. The number 1 seed in the NFC. The NFC runs through Philadelphia. So for once, we get to sit back and take a breath of fresh air because we get to watch some wild card football. We get to let the fates decide who the Eagles will be playing. And how can you get involved in on the action? Well, you could do it by placing some bets. You know the only place we do it. It's at betonline.net. And we are going to be picking all 6 games today. Scrolling on the bottom of the screen for our friends watching along are all 6 lines, but I will run you through them, starting with the first game Saturday. We get Saturday football, Sunday football, Monday night football. This is going to be fun. The first game, San Francisco 49ers are hosting the Seattle Seahawks. The Niners are minus 9.5 point favorites. The Niners are very, very good on defense. When you talk about defense, they fly to the football. They are going to give Gino Smith a heck of a lot of trouble. But Brock Purdy's never played in a playoff game. Gino Smith, he hasn't played in a playoff game in quite some time. He hasn't led a team to a playoff in quite some time. How are both of these quarterbacks going to show out? I have a weird feeling this game is going to be scrappy. I would say that this is an under type of game. I think Seattle stays within that 9.5 number. It's a division game. Brock Purdy is an unknown. Geno Smith is a great story. All that being said, 9.5 is a lot of points for a rookie quarterback to cover. I'm going to go with the Niners winning the game. I am picking Seattle to cover with that 9.5. The second game on Saturday, Doug Peterson is favored in a playoff game at home. How fitting, because it is 5 years to the date that the Philadelphia Eagles took on the Atlanta Falcons in the divisional round, where they had a line that they were underdogs. This time around, the Jacksonville Jaguars are underdogs. I said they were favored at home. I apologize. They are underdogs. The Chargers are going on the road, minus 2.5 at Jacksonville. Doug Peterson at home in the playoffs, an underdog. This story has been written 1,000 times before. I believe Jacksonville is going to win outright. As big of a Justin Herbert fan as I am, without Mike Williams in this game, Mike Williams has been that Lane Johnson type of character for the Chargers that when he isn't in, it makes it difficult for them to win. And Jacksonville, with that story, with Dougie P and what he has done, that magic around Doug Peterson, he's going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I think Jacksonville, they are going to win outright, and they're going to cover that minus, or they're going to be plus 2.5 rather. So take that money line, give yourself a little bit extra there. Starting out the next game, we are going to Sunday. Buffalo minus 13.5, hosting the Miami Dolphins, the Tua-less Miami Dolphins, that is. Skylar Thompson, the rookie out of Kansas State, will be getting the start against, of all people, Josh Allen. Man, that is not an easy test to go up to Buffalo in that environment, in the cold, with the rookie quarterback. Pains me to say, I think Buffalo's going to blow the doors off of them. I think they beat them by 28 points. I don't think this one is even close. The Bills at home in the playoffs, it's just not a monster you want to deal with. The off-field storyline of DeMar Hamlin and just that energy around the whole team, the whole fan base, something special is going on there in Orchard Park right now. And as long as they are playing in Buffalo, we'll see what happens in the AFC Championship game if they have to go on the road and travel to that neutral zone environment. But right now, man, Miami, best of luck. You're going to have a rough trip home. Give me that Buffalo minus 13.5. I think they win by 28. Following that game, the Minnesota Vikings are minus 3, hosting the New York Giants inside the Dome up there in Minnesota. The Giants, it's an interesting story. They can run the football. Minnesota, can they stop the run? That will be the big test. Daniel Jones, he doesn't have much to throw to on the outside. This is going to be a ground and pound style football game. Can Minnesota get Justin Jefferson going? Can the Giants stop Justin Jefferson? If Justin Jefferson goes, I think that minus 3 is an easy cover, but minus 3 at home in the playoffs against the Giants, that line is intriguing. Give me the Giants with the 3 points. That is a rat line, a trap line all day long. I'm taking the Giants plus 3 over the Minnesota Vikings. The final game on Sunday, Cincinnati Bengals minus 8.5 versus the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore, we do not know the status of Lamar Jackson. If you could get this line in now to take Cincinnati minus 8.5 with the threat of Lamar potentially playing, you could kind of hedge it. If he does play, the line's going to go down. If he doesn't play, the line is going to go up. So if you want to average it out, I would grab that line now at minus 8.5. If he does play, I think you have to believe that they are going to cover. If he doesn't play, Tyler Huntley, Anthony Brown, that combination hasn't shown me enough to stay in a game with Joe Burrow, who has been playing lights out the last few weeks. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals. It is a lot of points, but you are at home against the Baltimore team that even if Lamar is healthy, he won't be 100%. Give me the points. Give me Baltimore, or give me Cincinnati, rather. I think Baltimore is going to have a hard time at the office. The final game, it is going to be a Monday Night Football game, potentially deciding who the Philadelphia Eagles play, unless the Giants can scrape it out, unless Seattle can scrape it out. This is the most likely winner to see who plays the Philadelphia Eagles. The Dallas Cowboys are traveling on the road, minus 2.5 at Tampa Bay. Boy, oh boy, is this one of those games where I am just saying, give me those points. I do not trust the Dallas Cowboys at all when it comes to this time of the year. This game reminds me a lot of when Dallas was the 1 seed when they were playing the Green Bay Packers. The Cowboys were favored in that game. They aren't at home this time around. They are playing a Hall of Fame quarterback in Tom Brady. Very similar scenario to what they played against Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago. Dak Prescott has been one of the worst quarterbacks in football when it comes to turning the ball over. And for the sake of everything holy, don't allow the Cowboys to win a playoff game. We don't need to see that. I think Tampa is going to win this one outright. Give me the plus 2.5 for the Tampa Bay Bucks. They're going to win this game, and they potentially will be the opponent that the Philadelphia Eagles will be seeing in a week or so. But for now, that'll do it for us here at the Locked On Eagles podcast. We thank you for making it your first listen each and every day. And for your second listen, make sure you go check out the Locked On NFL Today podcast and all of the Locked On Podcast Network shows. If you're a Philly fan, make sure you check out Locked On Flyers, Locked On Phillies, Locked On Sixers. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft, Locked On NFL Today. Get in all the insight information you can. We know you're here at Locked On Eagles 5 days a week. Check us out on Twitter at GC24_football. Check out my co-host at DiBiase and check out the mothership at Locked On Birds. Make sure you check out the podcast wherever you get your shows, Spotify, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, wherever you get the regular podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube. But above all, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you interact. Make sure you're leaving a 5-star review. Make sure you're leaving comments. Any way to continue to get those numbers up for LOE. The fans are what makes this thing go. We're going to be able to relax this week, Eagles fans. Enjoy this football because in a week's time, we're going to be stressed out. But as always, in 5 years to the date of one of the biggest games in Eagles history, fly, Eagles, fly.